I want you to take one thing from this video, and that thing is a mind map of project architecture that I've created that allows to turn any idea into a self-sustainable project, to turn it into a system that is fully automated and capable of being a self-sustainable asset that doesn't require, managing it all day long. This map can be downloaded from the link in my description on my website. You can easily download this map for free and use Mind Manager to open it and analyze your own project. It took me years to develop this, and I really want to share this with you because I really feel that many people should know this. It can be applied to a project of any size, of any complexity, to figure out the parts of the system and figure out the ways to automate those pieces, and download it right now and use it every time you make a project of any kind. Like you will avoid many strategic mistakes if you analyze your projects through this mind map. Okay, I promise you that this will actually help you in many ways. That this is basically what I do before I do any actual work in any project, to make sure that I will not go in the wrong direction. Yeah, so thanks for being here, and let's get started. All right, let's put our lemon honey tea to the side here, and let me tell you in general what I want to describe today. So this is our project architecture map that I created over the years of managing different projects. This map unites all the different stages of project development into one big map. It has, as you can see, 7 steps: what, for whom, repetitive problems, repetitive processes, user stories, architecture, and replacing every I in the project with anyone. Each step is like a brainstorm in a certain direction. You go from top to bottom. You take the brainstorm of the previous branch, and any good ideas that you come up with at that stage, you use them in the branch that goes lower in this list as a starting point to make the brainstorm in this next direction. If you came to certain thoughts on the repetitive problems stage, you plug them into the repetitive processes stage as a starting point, okay, to design your repetitive processes brainstorm. Once you come up with the repetitive processes brainstorm, you use them as input into your user stories node to use them as a starting point to make a user stories brainstorm, to design your user stories that you actually need. And once you go through all the steps, you will in the end have an actual decent automated system. Now let's figure out what every step means. Okay, first, the topic is our name of the project. This is the name of the system that we are working on, the name of our task. The first step is what, okay? And the what step is where we describe everything we know we have to do. everything we know so far. For example, we describe in general that we need to do this and that, and it has to have these pieces of the puzzle, and add every piece of detail that we can think of before we go lower in the list. Once we have all those pieces, we make certain main points bold, and those bold points, which are like the main points, will go lower in our map. Will be used as an input into the nodes that go lower in this map. Next branch is for whom. What this means is basically you have to describe everything you know about the client who will be using it, everything you know about his clients who will be using it, okay? Everything you know about his system, his, all the pieces of the puzzle that he is trying to, fit together by using your tool that you're designing right now. Repetitive problems is, a list of all the things that go wrong in the system, right? Things that don't let you grow, things that you can't handle, things that consume time and don't bring any value, for example, or obstacles, any kind of thing that you want to achieve but you can't, right? All the reasons why you can't achieve certain things. But all those things have to be listed under this branch of repetitive problems of the project you're working on. You will be arranging them up and down and making your little, structure. Some problems depend on the others, and you will make a hierarchy of them, and will try to make sense of the data you collect about repetitive problems. Here you will find all the pieces, all the problems that need to be solved by your solution, right? You will predict the smallest pieces that can go wrong in your future project. Repetitive processes is all the processes that you see are required to build your system, right? Based on the problems that you see, based on the requirements that you wrote in previous sections. In the repetitive processes step, you will describe all the pieces of the puzzle and how they connect to each other. You will know all the repetitive processes and all the connections, and later you will work on these with these processes and connections between them to make a system, intertwined system which works like a clock, basically, which doesn't have any pieces that are not aligned or are disconnected. So that's what your repetitive processes step is. Now, user stories is basically, it comes from a programming world, and what it means is, a little story which says, when I do this, that thing should happen. Basically, when I click a button, this machine should turn on, for example, or when I'm trying to print my document, the printer should print it, right? All these user stories are your tests of what your system is doing and how it should behave. The architecture basically is already more technical. Like, you already, at the architecture state, you already know what user stories you need. Basically, you know what mechanisms you need and what triggers you need to launch those mechanisms. So at the architecture stage, all you have to do is kind of design the full picture of what components, what technical components should exist in your system and how they should be connected. All the all the standards of connections between systems and all the tools that you will use, all the machinery that you will use, all the technology that you will use to make those user stories. Okay, you will decide which technologies you have to pick that are capable of implementing all those user stories. Often it's not just one tool, right? It's more often than not, it's all about selecting, many tools which do one thing perfectly, and then you have to connect these tools and make sure that they, don't have any unpredictable misalignments that you didn't think of. And once you have all the architecture puzzles, your last step will be to replace every I in the system by the phrase anyone. For example, if you have a user story that says, when I click this button, then this machine turns on, you have to turn it into, when anyone clicks this button, then that machine turns on. All right. This little trick is the key to the entire transformation of your project from being your small little solution to your own problem into a system with ongoing development, the system that is capable to be exported into different companies and used by them, right? This step will allow you to predict what will happen to your project once it's so good that other people want to use it. It's important to predict this before you actually do any work, so that you don't get to redesign your whole project many times. If you do this step right now, you will not have to recreate your system from ground up. But once you hit the bigger market, it's a very common story that some people create, a little project and other people start using it. And when that happens, they realize that there are some technical or legal limitations that don't allow them to, scale this project, or at least don't allow them to scale this project fast enough. This step is very mind-bending. It allows you to shift the perspective and actually predict what your project will become once you have clients that want to use it. Because we usually start from something very small, something that we like, something that we want to make for ourselves. But once we actually come to this stage where we have all the pieces of the puzzle, we can realize that either we invested our time in the system that shouldn't be built in the first place, or we didn't predict certain outcomes, and now we have to adjust our solution to solve those outcomes as well. This is the most important step. Now, before we go any further, we have to discuss one case when this approach doesn't work. Okay? There are cases when the following thing happens. You follow the flow of this map, you reach the point of analyzing repetitive processes, and once you're done with repetitive processes, you get stuck. Okay? You cannot go to user stories stage. This can happen for many reasons. Just to name a few, for example, you aren't allowed to press any buttons inside the project, right? For example, you have to ask for permissions to do anything inside a project, right? When you don't control the project, or if, for example, the project is too big for an original owner, where he has the components that he doesn't really care about, and he doesn't want to invest time and money into, polishing them, but he wants them to work, right? He wants to be this guy who can solve everything without doing anything. Or if you aren't allowed to modify any user stories inside the project, if you're, for example, invited into a project as an independent expert, and you don't really do anything, strategic there. Or another case is when you, no matter how many user stories you do not make the project any good, right? You don't add any automation. You're trying really hard to analyze any user stories, and no matter how hard you try, you aren't adding any, automation. In those cases, you will have to behave a little bit differently. All right, you will have to choose a slightly different trajectory. You will have to basically split this project into pieces, right? So how we do that is once we finish the repetitive processes stage, instead of going to the user stories stage, we will instead ask ourselves how we can automate every repetitive process and every connection between repetitive processes. Let me repeat that. You will have to look at your repetitive processes map, look at the nodes, which are the processes, and the connections between them, right? What should function with what? And you will have to ask yourself how to automate every process and every connection between those processes individually. You will have to do a little bit of a analysis here on how to, in which order to automate things. For example, you will have to solve first the processes that are very easy to automate, and at the same time, the processes such as if you don't automate them, you can't go any further, right? You will have to kind of sort the processes to figure out which processes are the most fundamental, right? The processes that have the most connections going into them, right? And you will have to automate those processes first. For example, if you have a network of computers that have to have some network, functionality, the first thing you do is set up a network, and only then you do some settings and software adjustments to make the computers work together, right? Now, when I say automate, I mean you will have to open a new project architecture map, and you will have to, ask all the same questions as if it was a separate project, okay? You will have to analyze every, piece of the system or every group of pieces as a separate project. 80% of such tasks will get solved by something very minor, very basic, some things that you can basically do without, creating a whole new project around them. But sometimes you will have to design, a new project that will service the previous project, okay? You will have to create a project that controls the thing without which the other project can't function. If you are in this situation, then you, first of all, you will, in the original project, you will not go into this direction of, user stories and architecture and replacing every I with anyone. You will not be able to do that because you aren't allowed to change the system, for example, right? So instead you will create a satellite project that you fully control, that you can, create user stories and you can design it the way you want it, and then you will sell it to the original project to solve a part of their system, and they will be grateful for that, okay? And as a result, you will own, one or two or three new projects which will service this need for everyone else, right? For not just for the project that you were originally working on, but also for other similar companies, right? So now you can actually look at this as sort of a weapon for taking the pieces of someone else's systems that they don't want to perfect, that they don't want to work on, but that need to be done, right? You will take those things that they think are too not important or too out of the scope of their project to be working on, and you will take them and make your analysis around them and design your own solution to their problem. In the new project, you will have a separate project architecture map, and you will go through all these stages, and this time you will be able to finish the map, but you will also create a solution that not only the original project wants to buy now, but also you can easily place an ad online that you have this service, and other similar projects will ask for this service as well, right? Product or service or whatever. So this is the way you can actually find a new project like out of nowhere, right? This is how you can find what projects to work on, but also this is how you kind of create balance in the world, right? You remove the problem of owners not willing to improve certain parts of their system, right? You kind of evolve into this project without which they can't function, because they need this to grow and they aren't doing it, and you did. So you are the next evolutionary step, and they will have no choice except just buying it from you, So that's how this works. This is the most interesting aspect of this for me right now, and I will provide you a little bit later an example of exactly how this happened in my practice, and you will actually be excited to hear the possibilities. This is fairly interesting way that things can develop, right? You will extract all the pieces into separate projects, and they will kind of service the main core components of the original project, and that original project will just become obsolete, right? Because if he doesn't buy this from you, then and someone else will, then they go out of business. So they will not be able to just say no to you. So I'm describing a situation when you came to someone else's project as an employee, right? But you started working on it. They gave you some limitations, and you went around those limitations, and you first created a leash, to leverage, if you will, if you can kind of decide inside the company the things that they didn't expect. And After that, you'll just control the entire market, right? You will find this leverage not only for this company, but for all the similar companies, because there are many companies out there that try to control things that they aren't really qualified to control, right? The things that they don't really want to improve, right? So this is like, you have to know this aspect before you do any actual work. Like this is an alternative path that happens like basically every time you work on someone else's projects. Like, yeah, I can guarantee you that you will face this, and this is how you behave in these situations, and that's how it's gonna end. Now, I will finish this video with an example of how I use this map in real life. I got a call from a bakery. They asked me to basically come and fix the computers, fix the network, fix the cameras, etc. I came there, and what I saw was they are a bakery, right? They're making bread. They're not like high-tech people. They kind of fixed everything they could with simplest and cheapest solutions possible. Their network was not working, their cameras were not recording, they used computers that weren't enough for the jobs that they were doing. One computer was not even booting up because the disk was too slow. Their Windows was out of date. They had the surveillance system, but no one was looking at it. So a lot of these good decisions that didn't really come together as one system, I realized that they don't know what they are doing, and instead of doing everything they ask for, I did this map to actually help them. I wrote a name as always, which is like a bakery name. Then the what question is clear, okay? We know that it's a business that's already exists. It's a bakery. They are solving a problem of, not enough bread in the region. It has a name, it has a location. They make bread for certain people. They try to sell it. That's in general, what the project is. We won't change the things that this project solves. We will just help it do its work better, right? Everything I've seen during the first day of being there, I wrote down here, okay? Their size, what technologies I saw they have been using, everything that I saw was here. Now, for whom is a kind of a tricky one, because for whom this project exists, it actually exists for the people who don't have bread in their home, right? Like, this project is created so that others could eat bread in the morning, right? I mean, bread is not a joke. It's like in Ukraine, at least, it's like the main thing that is in everybody's houses. They supply bread for small cities around my hometown. They just have drivers who go and sell their bread every morning. Now, repetitive problems. I came there as an IT guy, so they described to me only the IT problems. They didn't show me the entire picture. They showed me only the things that didn't work in terms of technology. They showed me the computers that aren't working properly. They showed me the cameras aren't working, the network isn't set up. I saw that there are so many of these problems that, I can spend my entire life just going there every day and do everything I am asked for, but it's not gonna solve their, automation stage. They are trying to go in this direction with a trial and error path. They are reinventing the wheel, basically. They want to go there. I see that they want to, automate all these steps and kind of fit the pieces together, but they can't because they lack planning, they lack experience, they never actually successfully did this. There was a big problem that they needed to fix, which was that they needed to track somehow people who are stealing stuff, right? I mean, everything in that factory is basically calculated by weight, meaning if you have like 300 kilos of powder and sugar come in, people who go there to take the consumables from the basement, they can actually steal stuff, okay? Or even worse, they can actually take the bread that factory produced and put it inside, under their jackets or inside their bag when no one is looking, and take it home. Were going around the factory chewing the bread, which is also like a lost income for the company, right? It's a big no for a company to be, losing their product because its workers are consuming it for free, basically. So I skipped this stage of repetitive problems and solving them because their problem is lack of planning, lack of full picture, high level overview of what they need and where it should go, right? And how the things should connect and what they should do. So what I did is during like 2 hours, I drew this map of repetitive processes in the IT direction of their company. So this is all the informational repetitive processes. Everything boils down to information. Like if you can set up information flow paths in the system properly, then everything else just works. I presented this as an architecture that I would do if I was building this company from scratch, and they were, shocked. They were like, oh wow, you actually understood us better than we understood this business after 15 years of experience, and you did it in a day. So yeah, if you can do all these things, you go ahead. As you can see, there aren't very many processes. Accounting documents and printing them, designing barcodes and printing barcodes, video surveillance, recording video surveillance, storage, internet access. So they do have like 20 repetitive informational processes or something, and it's a factory, right? You don't have any wiggle room. You have exact requirement of what people should be making, and you have to make like 3,000 breads of the same kind, right? It's to do that, to be able to do that, people have to strictly follow the steps, and everything has to be precise. We can't go any lower in our architecture map because the next step is user stories, and I'm not gonna be clicking any buttons in this factory. I'm like a guy who just came there to help. I don't have any clearance to do anything, right? They have an ongoing production and they have employees that do their job. I couldn't just go to the next step of user stories and replacing I with anyone, right? So I picked the trajectory number 2, right? The automation trajectory. I asked myself, how can I automate every repetitive process and every connection between repetitive processes? On this map, everything that is blue is what I worked on so far, right? If you follow all the arrows where they are pointing and follow from those nodes further and further until you reach the most fundamental point and automate things in that order, most fundamental records first, the order of solutions became very clear, alright? First, I upgraded all the computers. If the computers are bad, then everything else is just irrelevant. I replaced one of their computers with a Ryzen 3 processor, and the rest I just upgraded to SSD disks, and they are just like clients that connect to the main Ryzen computer. I've installed the latest Windows 10. I installed all the software that they need, right? All the document editing software and barcode editing software. I fixed their problems with surveillance cameras not working. I installed them the new cables between the cameras and the recorders, and I also installed a second monitor on every computer so that every worker has a second screen where the surveillance is open, okay, so that they can actually look at all the cameras while they're working with their kind of peripheral vision and actually see real time the entire factory so that no one steals anything, for example. When the most fundamental stages were already done, I switched to the records that are pink on this map, which are connected to the baking process, okay, which includes, baking timers, turning on, turning off their big ovens, and recording how much of which bread they made and how many consumables they spent. Basically, I replaced the brain of the oven with an open source solution. I wrote a program on .NET C#, and I connected everything through Arduino. I can implement the features that I need and record all the things that I need to be recorded, because the original oven was too old to have those features. They didn't record the history, for example. The surveillance system is still a work in progress. What I did was I wrote them a program that can recognize the bread in people's hands, and what I proposed was to put cameras, for example, if they are walking out of the factory, they shouldn't be carrying the bread, right? So the camera will make a little square around their hand that they are carrying something, and will take a picture and send it to the factory owner, right? This program is still in progress. It already recognizes the objects with 99% accuracy, but it still needs a little work to, I want it to be actively working not only outside the factory but also inside, and inside there's bread everywhere, and I need to kind of train it to kind of see the difference between people working with bread and people stealing bread, meaning that they are allowed to move it around but they aren't allowed to chew it, for example, okay? So stuff like that. It's still work in progress. Once it's done, it will record the violations, it will submit the reports. That's what I'm working on. These steps are all marked yellow on this map. All these steps were extracted into this project of surveillance automation. The other steps on this map are fairly simple, and some of them are solved: tracking their drivers, submitting reports to the tax office via digital kind of reporting system, stuff like that. Automating them is kind of my last priority, because they are not the most fundamental steps by my definition of what fundamental means. Now, automating the connection means basically making sure things are always connected no matter what happens in the project, okay? For example, if you want to connect the computers to the printers, then the automation of connections looks like setting up the printer settings on computers so that they are open to the shared network, for example. Yeah, so this is a still work in progress, but I already have 2 projects that are just servicing the factory, and which are still in development, and they're constantly improving, and once they are stable enough, I'll just sell them to other factories as well as a service. Actually, the links are already in the description to some of these solutions. And it looks like in the end, all these pieces will submit into one admin panel, and that admin panel will just, show all the data on one page, for example. There will be several tabs where the drivers are, what consumables are being used, how many times the ovens were turned on and turned off, stuff like that. So admin panel is like this last step after which the automation of this factory will be finished. So as you can see, we don't have to go back to the main map, the main project architecture map, because all these informational steps, we kind of fixed them from outside. We didn't have to look into them as a part of the bakery. So that's an example. Alright, so that's my story. The links to download my map are in the description under this video. You can actually also ask me to analyze your project. You can reach me in the comments, and if I have time, if I'm available, I can look into your business, and in my next video I can review your project. So that's gonna be great. If you want me to look into your system, just let me know in the comments and I'll look into it. So yeah, have a good one. That's all I have to say for now. Good luck.